Throughout the wasteland, T.S. Eliot manipulates the elements to support his various plot points. Some situations that he touches on are positive and some are negative, but Eliot is able to work these elements in the necessary direction to back up the particular ideas that he is trying to convey. One of the main elements that Eliot utilizes multiple times is water. Our depiction of water is very clean and purifying for the most part. It is an essential part of our being and necessary for survival. However, water is also a means of death. Eliot explores both illustrations of water throughout the poem. We see how integral water is to humanity in a scene towards the end of the poem in which Eliot illustrates a wasteland for the reader. The key necessity that is lacking in this image is water. That is essentially what makes the description a wasteland. We get this dreary image when Eliot says, "Son of man, you cannot say or guess, for you know only a heap of broken images where the sun beats, and the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water. Only there is shadow under this red rock. Come in under the shadow of this red rock, and I will show you something different from either your shadow at morning striding behind you, or your shadow at evening rising to meet you. I will show you fear in a handful of dust." The key mood that is evoked from this passage is one that is sinister and literally dry. Later in the poem, there is a scene that is illustrated even more deeply involving a lack of water. He lays out this portrait for the reader by saying, "Here is no water but only rock, rock and no water and the sandy road, the road winding above among the mountains, which are mountains of rock without water. If there were only water amongst the rock, dead mountain mouth of carious teeth that cannot spit. Here one can neither stand nor lie nor sit. There is not even silence in the mountains, but dry, sterile thunder without rain." The whole scene changes upon the gust of rain that all of a sudden enters the picture. A simple weather habit changes the entire mood of the scene due to its rarity and essentialness. The mood of relief is described when Eliot says, "In this decayed hole among the mountains, in the faint moonlight, the grass is singing. Over the tumbled graves, about the chapel, there is the empty chapel, only the wind's home. It has no windows and the door swings. Dry bones can harm no one. Only a cock stood of the roof tree, cocorico, cocorico, in a flash of lightning, then a damp gust, bringing rain." Eliot includes more unfortunate aspects of water in the poem as well. In section 2, Eliot indirectly references the element of water by alluding to the drowning of Ophelia in Shakespeare's play Hamlet. He says, "Good night, Bill. Good night, Lou. Good night, May. Good night. Ta-ta. Good night. Good night. Good night, ladies. Good night, sweet ladies. Good night. Good night." These extensive good nights advert to Ophelia and her intentional or accidental death by water. Also, in the beginning of the poem, Madame Sosostris reads a sailor's death by water in the tarot cards. Later, in the section oh so cleverly entitled Death by Water, the reader finds out that Madame Sosostris's predictions were true, and the sailor did in fact drown. The Death by Water section says, "Plebus the Phoenician, a fortnight dead, forgot the cry of gulls and the deep sea swell, and the profit and loss. A current undersea picked his bones in whispers. As he rose and fell, he passed the stages of his age and youth, entering the whirlpool. Gentile or Jew, O you who turn the wheel and look to windward, consider Plebus, who was once handsome and tall as you." These examples specifically portray the major destruction that water is capable of. In both helpful and calamitous ways, water is full of power, and Eliot makes sure to get that point across to the reader. We are able to get a sense of this power of water in a scene in the poem involving a polluted river. Even in an altered state, the river is described as extremely powerful in impacting all things involved with it. The river is described when Eliot says, "The river sweats, oil and tar, the barges drift with the turning tide. Red sails, wide, to leeward swing on the heavy spar. The barges wash, drifting logs, down Greenwich Reach, past the Isle of Dogs. Wayalala Leia, Walala Leia. Elizabeth and Leicester beating oars, the stern was formed, a gilded shell. Red and gold, the brisk swell. Rippled both shores, southwest wind, carried downstream, the peal of bells, white towers. Wayalala Leia, Walala Leia. The element of water seen in this river and its power in this scene lead Elizabeth and Leicester to make a decision. Air is an element that is also extremely essential to our existence. However, Eliot uses this element scarcely within the poem. Through this scarcity, however, the reader truly understands the impact of the lifeless scene that this element represents. In section 2 of the poem, there is a scene in which a couple is conversing, but they keep getting interrupted by the wind under the door. The air carelessly flowing through the door leads to a conversation of the man's true vitality. The woman says, "You know nothing? Do you see nothing? Do you remember nothing?" Air tends to be thought of as a lifeless floating obstacle, and through this perception the reader is able to receive a true understanding of the man's emptiness. Earth is considered the general base of all things. It is an element that is seen as a stronghold that is the root of all life. Eliot, however, changes the common depiction of this element. He says, "April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dried tubers." The sense of growth that is normally connected with earth is abandoned, and instead, a lifeless period of time is portrayed as the better option. By manipulating this common idea, Eliot forces us to think of earth in a different way. It is something that we rely on, but what if we could no longer depend on its resources? The snow-covered ground is a form of a wasteland that can no longer provide the essential assets that it was once capable of producing. Fire is a different type of element. Instead of being considered a fundamental detail of life, a virulent feeling is usually brought along with it. A section of the poem entitled "The Fire Sermon" covers many internal sensations of fire. In this section, there is actually a scene that alludes to the descent into hell. Eliot says, "I too awaited the unexpected guest." This guest refers to death, and the sexually abusive events that unfold after this statement represent a unique type of hell. Throughout the entire poem, we see lustful desires of human nature. Regardless of whether the scene encompasses rape or consensual sexual activities, each sexual encounter exhibits the internal, fiery feelings that lust entails in that given moment. One scene specifically involves a strange relationship between a man and woman. Regardless of this contact, the man sexually abuses the woman and the reader experiences the result of these erotic aspirations. Eliot narrates, "The meal is ended, she is bored and tired, endeavors to engage her in caresses, which are unreproved if undesired. Flushed and decided, he assaults at once. Exploring hands encounter no defense. His vanity requires no response and makes a welcome of indifference." Also in this section, we see another sexual encounter between a couple in a canoe riding on a polluted river. However, I feel that this pollution isn't entirely based on litter and debris. The girl says, "Trams and dusty trees, Highbury bore me, Richmond and Kew undid me. By Richmond I raised my knees, supine on the floor of a narrow canoe. My feet are at Moorgate, and my heart under my feet. After the event he wept. He promised a new start. I made no comment. What should I resent? On Margate sands, I can connect nothing with nothing. The broken fingernails of dirty hands, the humble people who expect nothing, nothing. La la, to Carthage then I came, burning, 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 burning. O Lord, thou pluckest me out, O Lord, thou pluckest, burning. These spur-of-the-moment ambitions are addressed in the Buddhist fire sermon. This piece expresses that all sensitive desires should be avoided at all costs. According to the sermon, one is not to give in to your desires because these cravings in life are what ruin us. Everything is burning, more or less, especially these lustful impulses. The elements overall assist to uncover the general theme of the wasteland. The elements can make or break us. They are full of force and can leave us happy and thriving, or in a horrific wasteland. They allow the reader insight into the results that each element can easily cause and henceforth lead to a literal wasteland lacking necessities. Although the wasteland that Eliot is referring to isn't as extreme, he wants us to still perceive the severity of this modern wasteland. Just like the elements, people and ideas in our society have a similar extreme impact. That is the idea that Eliot is intending to share with the reader. There are so many powerful components to this world that can change our fate in the snap of a finger. In the wasteland, he is sharing the possible corrupted unfoldings that would be a result of these mighty factors of our lives.